get it online, and then give me a moment to share links around the internet.
So is this going to be on a Nerd Union or Commander Shipp?
Commander Shipp. So it'd be on my Facebook page and Twitch.
Okay, that's what I was trying to find on. Not a weird thing where I look at my face twice and in time delay.
How did you get the nickname Commander Shipp?
Because of Halo. Because everyone thinks it's from the military, but it's actually as a result of I played so much Halo, and I was kind of like in my group, I was like the guy that.
You were a strategist.
Yeah. So when it came to like planning group parties or like organizing things, they'd be like, "Hey, Kenny, can you handle that?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I got it." So that's
I can chat with people while in Melon.
Yes, so you should be able to see you can stay here the entire time. Be able to see.
Okay.
What's up, Sarah Cherney? What's up, Cherney?
I don't think I ever met Sarah in person.
Should do that. Amazing organizer.
Don't tell me how to live my life.
I'm giving you a recommendation for your life.
You're not my dad.
I'm not your dad. I would have done so many different things.
What are you implying?
He's implied he would have got the belt.
We got
Hello,
Tom
Ricard.
Burns from Utah.
Sweden in the house.
Yeah. All right.
Hello from Germany. Oh, Germany. Wow.
Oh, wow. A lot of folks jumped in there.
International.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to get up too early. But I was like, I feel like this time will kind of accommodate.
Yeah, because it's like evening and before they want to go out and do stuff.
Yeah. Sweden, I see Varden, Colorado,
Varden, good old Varden.
Rosie, UK.
Taking time away from terrorizing Facebook, Varden.
I feel like Varden hasn't really done anything controversial on Facebook in a while.
Yeah.
Just give him that.
Oh yeah.
Well, to be fair, there's been
That's
no
like
dancing. There's been no dancing to like Harper. To be like, hey, y'all fucking up. I mean, as much crap as people give Varden, it's like, okay, but most of the stuff is like,
he says
he's not wrong. It's about y'all. It's about y'all messing up something. So like, are you in your feels? Is that what's really going?
It's like, oh, if you don't mess up, you won't say nothing.
What is it? Don't start no stuff.
Won't be no stuff.
Won't be no stuff.
Won't be no stuff.
All right, my personal favorite, the clapback will be televised.
That's a good one. I like it. The clapback will be televised. All right. So for anyone that's joining us, we're going to give folks a cut. I need that on a plaque. Yeah. So I think everyone is seeing how the chat function works. So if you've never been on one of my streams, for you to talk to me or for what I do on Nerd Union, we are multicasting. So we can see you on Twitch. We can see you on Facebook. I just dropped a link in the Facebook page as well for folks that are waking up, joining us, or almost bedtime for folks. So we're gonna chat. Me, Maurice, and Shelby. We're just gonna go. They have free reign to look in the comments, respond to things as they want to. So you can ask questions, but that's not necessarily the. If we miss your question, we'll try to get back to it, but that's not necessarily the focus. So I kind of want to let Maurice and Shelby have the floor to chat today. Also, I know I put the label "Talk to Me" just because folks are familiar with that, but I will not be spinning music today. We might do that for another time. So this is just going to be straight talking. And as I've said before, there's a licensing thing there. So hopefully in the future, hopefully very soon in the future, we'll be able to actually get music back on a regular basis playing. So I'd love to get back to that. It's not that I didn't like doing it. It's just
Licensure was like muting everything.
Yeah. So
like
it's like
Instagram on all my TikToks. He had this Instagram removed because of licensing. Yet I play a Michael Jackson song that I can't play. I could play Ready from the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack, but I can't play. But I'm able to play Bad. Michael.
Or you could like use a TikTok sound that's a cover of Bad made by a bad musician. So
them's the apples.
Yes.
Those are your options. What's up, Christian? St. Louis is in the house. Twice, I guess.
I'm close enough, I guess.
Yeah, you could. You still haven't visited me. I need you. Come on. I know. There's
okay.
You've been busy. You're traveling and stuff.
Have you seen Airfare lately? Jesus Christ.
No, Maurice is like Champaign-Urbana. It's like right there.
Yeah.
You know, you can just trade one cornfield for another cornfield.
All the Midwest states look alike, I swear to God.
Yeah.
From Iowa to Ohio, all the wilderness looks the same. Then Kansas is just flat, and you can see miles and miles.
Yeah, I've done the drive from Ohio to back to St. Louis and gone through all of that.
It's a Val. I haven't seen Val in forever. Miss you, friend.
We got Belgium in the house.
Belgium in the house.
Oh snap! Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no. Go for it.
So I figure let's just go ahead and I think we got enough folks that are settling in. So again, and if you have to leave out or you come in late, this will be recorded. So we'll post it back up on my pages, and it'll be available for Maurice and Shelby to share on their social media as they like as well. That's a good question, Gab. So I have not attended Herrang, so that's going to be an important distinction for this discussion. Probably never will.
I'm imagining you at Herrang, and it's just like it'd be honestly, if you were there, I think if we did go, it'd just be a much more look because we just roast everything.
Yeah. So in the interest of fairness, I am only really going to be talking organizationally, things that Shelby and Maurice bring up, and especially when we pivot the conversation to talk about. If you saw the photo in the event that Shelby made for their Patreon post that we borrowed for this event, the iceberg of that harangue is not the stop of this. This is not where it ends. So when it comes to that, it's very good. So when we get to that part, so real quick, does someone have audio coming out?
Mm-hmm.
Or is you still in headphones?
I'm still in my earbuds.
Let's see where I can get it from somewhere. All right, everyone's saying this sounds good. All right, we'll go ahead.
Yep. Oh yeah, I've got everything turned off. So.
Okay. Let's see. So with that in mind, I am not going to be talking necessarily harangue things. That's why I'm going to let Shelby and Maurice to handle it or to talk on that behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. There is a slant. I don't know.
Is it coming from me?
Well, how about you mute real quick? Okay, testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Yeah, okay. Maurice, unmute.
Say something.
Do you?
I don't hear anything.
Take your headphone off real quick. Do you have it? Do you hear anywhere else? Do you hear me coming from somewhere else?
Nope.
All right. Turn the volume down in your headphones. It may be a bleed. Oh. Something's still good. All right. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Can you still hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we'll be all right. If I had to guess, though, I think it might be some bleed. And what I'll do is my gain might be a little high, so I'll come down a little bit. Just make sure I'm not overblasting. Cool. All right,
Drop the link to
audience.
the Patreon in the Twitch chat because I can't figure out how to send messages in the stream chat.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're sounds good. Excellent. All right. So for folks that are just joining us, I am Commander Shipp. This is a Talk to Me show. It's where people come and talk to me, and we talk about things, usually dance related, usually blackness related, and try to break down the nonsense. Today's nonsense, as you saw from the show title, is the Herrang edition. So I think everyone knows my distinguished guests, but I'll give them an opportunity to quickly introduce themselves. Maurice, you want to start?
My name is Maurice. I started dancing in Minnesota. I have since moved to Illinois for graduate school, where I am pursuing a degree in opera performance.
Excellent. Go ahead, Shelby.
All right. I'm Shelby Johnson, aka Mr. Lindy Fitness. I started dancing in Orlando, Florida, while in grad school to get studying to get a master's in sport leadership and coaching. Then I moved to Dallas, Texas in 2013, where I've been traveling the country as a DJ, competitor, and instructor, and was a Frankie Manning ambassador in 2016, which is how I ended up going to Herrang.
And let's use that. Let's go ahead and use that to just hang out. Like, if we have people that are only tangentially aware of what Herrang is, how would you describe the event for them?
As I was saying, I use this analogy a lot. In short, Herrang is Disney World, and Frankie Manning is Mickey Mouse. So, with that said, Herrang Dance Camp started in I think the first camp was in 1981 or 82, and the first instructor was actually Al Minns. I think he caught 2 camps, and then he passed away from cancer, and they essentially were like, hey, we need to get another black person to teach us this dance. And so they went to New York and found Frankie Manning, and he's essentially taught from the camp every year until he passed away in, I can't remember the year, 2009. When did Frankie Manning pass away?
Mm-hmm.
Was it 2009?
Somewhere around that time.
Somewhere around that time.
I was very young, so I wouldn't have known. Yeah.
And yeah, so pretty much it's like a camp. They kind of took over a small town of Herrang, April 2009. Aha.
Thank
Never
you,
did
Dad.
a month.
Yeah.
But Herrang's a small remote village. I think some hours, I want to say north of Stockholm. I don't know. There's Swedish people. There's people from Sweden in the chat who can correct me. I don't know what geography is. And so pretty much they take this town and make it a camp that it operates throughout the entire month of July. And so, and you have camps in tents, people camp, people stay in different lodging, people sleep on top of each other in different cabins and barracks, and pretty much it's they intentionally try to have it to be a Wonderland escape from the rest of the world. And it's cool as long as you're white and cis het.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think a thing that is important about the camp is that you're limited to a specific, not only genre, but period of music. So anything from early jazz music around 1890s all the way through bebop of the early 60s. But if it doesn't swing, you can't play it. You can't play anything that isn't rhythm and blues. Past that, I think some of the covers of some of the songs that we hear that are done by 60s artists are okay, but then you can't get much past that. So it kind of keeps you in sort of a remembrance of like music that just left the Jim Crow era.
Which is weird that you say that, like, nothing, you can't play, if it doesn't swing, you can't play it. Yet the Stockholm Jazz Orchestra.
What's that face for?
Just-
Huh? What does that mean?
Like, I don't know. Like, it was just, I couldn't dance to it. They sounded nice, but like, it didn't swing. And that's why I just like, yeah, I don't know.
But
there's going to be a lot of shots fired during this discussion. So,
I think
I'm expecting it.
One thing that I had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago, and it was specifically about trying to keep sort of the aesthetic of the time period that the swing era existed, and that while Herrang does its best to try and encapsulate that, you're also inadvertently encapsulating and putting into like this VHS the racism that comes from that era too. So some of the tropes, some of the things that like doing like what you would consider like minstrelsy, like sort of doing these faces and other such things that don't necessarily relate to what Black people are doing now. And so it's the improvement of these or the progression of these things and how they've shaped in Black communities now that's not even being close to represented in the camp.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because pretty much like the fact, like saying probably the most damning thing, like I think was like just the imagery of Frankie and things like that. Now, pretty much he's kind of made to a caricature in my eyes, and that was something very rough, especially like with the advertisements for like Frankie floats. I was like, did they use that graphic when you were there, Maurice? Like a little animated thing, and he's making like all those like over exaggerated facial expressions. And we actually said something to some people, and it was like they're like, "Oh, well, Frankie thought it was funny," and I'm like,
I mean, Frankie was also like in like the second half of his life. Like I try to phrase this in the best way possible, but like Frankie was old when they were doing those things. So he couldn't have, it's not that he didn't want to have a second opinion about it. It's that you guys were giving him money and you could take a second look at anything if you were giving someone numerous amounts of dollars.
Yeah. It's we've talked about Hattie McDaniels quite a bit. For those that are not aware, Hattie McDaniels was one of the most influential early Black film stars in U.S. history, but it came at the cost of her perpetuating the mammy stereotype, or the nurturing Black grandmother in the serving a white household stereotype. So much so that regularly SCLC, various Black organizations and groups would try to, I don't want to say they would chastise her, because I think there was an understanding there of like, there was an understanding of, we get it, you're getting paid. And in some ways, this is a representation, like trying to get you, like getting more Black people in Hollywood. But at the same time, it's also hurtful because it's perpetuating a stereotype. And
it's a double-edged sword, because like they had to do it. I think there was somebody else, because I don't think it wasn't Bilbo Jangles Robinson, because I don't think he performed in blackface. I think real early in his career. It was a very short period of time. But there's someone before him. I think they had a conversation. It was a story that Norman Miller said, like talking about how like they kind of people like younger dancers sound like they were selling and stuff. It's like, well, like I did this to one, to make a living, to get paid, but two, I had to withstand this so y'all could push forward and push back against that and be able to do more. And that's just like a weird thing. And I think, and that's a dynamic when it comes to a reason that like a lot of people don't understand, which is also, I think, why Norman Miller intentionally pushed people towards Frankie, because she knew Frankie had the temperament for what they wanted. And like she wasn't a fit. And honestly, I think if Al Minns hadn't passed away from cancer at the time he did, the scene would look very, very differently. Like, because because Al hated being called a Lindy opera. He was more of a jazz dance, and I don't think the dance probably would have spread as far because of his demeanor and temperament that he had. Well, like Frankie's personality was just naturally, and like I'm not going to say like Frankie wasn't confrontational. I mean, he did there like in his book he talks about punching a dude's lights out because he bumped into a showgirl and didn't say excuse me, and like. But I think like to Maurice's point, yeah, he was like older life and like he was just excited that the dance was coming back and he was getting to live a lifelong dream that he wanted. So he's gonna like let some things slide because of that. I'm like,
Mm-hmm. I think another aspect that I was just thinking of, I'm actually glad you brought up Hattie McDaniels because a really important musician that we often listen to is Fats Waller, and he would talk about how if he was going to be in a movie, I mean, even in Stormy Weather and other such movies, he wouldn't play certain roles, but he would play like someone who's attending an elevator or attending something because that would make him more money and get him more scenes on stage or in like a movie to do specific things, but he was still perpetuating the stereotype. Um, and it's hard because we sort of built, not we, I'd say that the aspects that Herrang has built themselves off of is watching things through a VHS, and
yeah,
that the compartmentalization of what we are embracing is not what's happening now.
yeah.
Um,
I think
Go
it's
ahead.
weird because I'm thinking like is vagabond the right word to use? Because kind of like the roughing it, kind of like they glorify kind of like living with the bare minimum and living gig to gig and thing aspect of musicians. But when you think about it, like with Fletcher Henderson, like that dude had a master's in science.
They just wasn't hiring black chemists.
They're not going to
Nope.
have, yeah, and it was only, I think it was a BBC documentary where a jazz historian actually said it because a lot of accounts, and I need to find it again, but a lot of other accounts don't mention it. It's like, oh, he just chose to do jazz because he loved jazz. I'm the one where I was like,
It's
no,
like, no.
No.
there was somebody in this documentary straight up said, it was like, no one in New York was hiring a black scientist at the time. That's why he ended up leading bands.
Mm,
And that's the thing why a lot of people, I think, I just don't, and I mean, it's kind of weird because we zoom out to the, um, to like the broader Lindy Hop scene where you have like all a bunch of white people like kind of like, oh, I'm gonna pick up playing an instrument, play jazz gig, and I have this STEM job that gets me about 80K to probably like just such a year and blah 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 because jazz is great and like it's just glorious. I'm like, no, those dudes did that because they didn't have a choice. They had to
yes.
live. It's like
Hmm.
it's interesting. It's like, and also like it's like one of those mind-boggling things. There were some people. Coleman Hawkins was somebody who was educated, formally educated, and had formal music training and stuff, and chose the musician because that's what he wanted to do. But like, I think like I'm surprised by how many performers people like had formal education either in music or in different things, and then and pretty much had pivoted to entertainment.
Were you, Shelby? This is a question for you. Were you taking African dance classes when you were at Herrang?
No, because the fact that the heathens were teaching it weirded me the fuck out. I can
The
cuss on this,
Heedmans
right?
were teaching it.
They didn't. I do not recall the only black instructor they had. The only black instructors they had when I was there were. Thank you for like reminding me of that terrible memory of that terrible performance that they did. Yeah, no, because like the only black they had, Josette was teaching that I had at the time. Josette was teaching tap classes. Marie and Dai was teaching, and there was Remy. And yeah, those are the only three black teachers. And none of them taught African dance. And I remember there was a performance where the Heathen taught African dance. Yeah.
Man.
Oh, okay. So
Go ahead. Sorry, that just threw me for a loop.
yeah,
And
okay.
it's not saying that if you got it, if you actually got it, that's one thing.
No, they
I
didn't.
got it. No, I knew it as soon as you said it. I knew it in my soul.
So I think they,
That was something
because I was in Herrang in 2019, and they brought in the person that they were taking lessons from, and they flew him in from his home country and a couple of his drummers to do classes with. And I always thought it was so interesting that we're taking classes from him because, like, don't get me wrong, I enjoy a really good African dance classes. I did Afro Modern when I was in Minnesota.
Ooh,
But
mercy.
I think the problem was that they're not embracing the very specific dances that are originated by Black Americans. Like, of course, they have the origins in these African dances that are being taught at the camp, which I thought was really, really cool and really, really interesting because he was showing us movement that was important to the dances that we were doing at the time, but it specifically takes away from the Black American aspects of Lindy Hop and jazz dances in general because you're not having the continuation of these dances further. So you're
Yeah.
not having a hip hop class. You're not having.
Well, it's like
Um,
it
Go
goes
ahead.
down to there's this obsession where people like, and once again, going back from like, the iceberg. We're using Herrang and then it's got to kind of adding to things. I think it was like a group in Indianapolis where somebody posted a comment from like Winston Marsalis talking about how like black music got away from the thing that made it great because you don't have people like playing instruments in a room together and things like that. And that could like, there's just this very anti hip hop, like very rap and hip hop, like kind of feel to the Lindy Hop community. And I'm going to call out blues. Like, let's like, I'm
No,
calling
no,
it out
that's
as well. Like,
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yep.
like it goes,
Very
and I think
fair.
I don't get it because people like, I mean, you have these people just because you've listened to like a Benny Goodman album and probably like Second Testament Basie doesn't make you a jazz aficionado because you can't taste because like you shit on freaking smooth jazz. Like when there's a lot of great smooth jazz artists out there, but if people are like,
But if your only reference for that smooth jazz is Kenny G, or your only reference for modern blues is like, I'm trying to think. As much as I like
Henry,
Tedeschi Trucks Band, then
Yeah.
yeah, you might think that or your view of that's going to be completely skewed.
well, it's like people, they're like, yes, jazz is a great American art form. I think hip hop's just as ingenious, but for different reasons. But it's like because people are so anti like hip hop, they don't understand how the rhythms and things continue with the music, and even going outside the jazz continuum, like how music and like popular music, like even continue with that, like. And so, like you said, people get stuck on African dance, jazz. I was like, no, there's a continuation, like
There's a whole very important like span of like 40 years of dance before you even like get to the 30s that are done by black folks who are still either coming from descendants of free slaves or are just freed slaves that are doing these dances. And you're like,
or
oh, this is.
sharecroppers, or they're getting like a variety of different experiences as they're going out to America for the first time during Reconstruction period. Like, yeah, there's a hodgepodge of
it's a hodgepodge of things, but also even like how we talk about solo jazz. It's kind of like it's just solo jazz. Like, what is that? You mean black bottom? You mean soft shoe? You mean I think sand dancing was something that was said at some point, which was like a form of soft shoe, which versions of flatfoot, which that's more Appalachian and which be coated white. But no, I'm sure there's a lot of black people doing flatfoot as well. It's like entire dance forms have been reduced to a single movement, which is like, and no one acknowledges that when it is like when discussing it. And so even like the dumbing down of things like erases so much like history and things in context with it, especially like with the aspect of like how to talk about African dance, which is like honestly I would like never take an African dance class from take an African dance class from a white person in this scene, honestly. Like I would not. Like I'm just gonna say that like off rip. Like they would have to like really, which is funny because I'm flipping the whole qualifications thing with teachers because that only comes up when we talk about having black artists teach. But I would need to see their block qualifications and why, like, to really, because I just assume that they're going to be missing context.
Well, Shelby, what if their context was? Let me just make sure I'm getting this right. I also remember walking past a group of Swedish children being told to imitate gorillas in order to get the Lindy stance correctly.
Yeah, you know what? That doesn't surprise me one bit.
Man, that does not.
Like I had a teacher try to like talk about, because this is one thing that worries me in the context conversation of like giving more historical context. To be fair, I want people to have that context. That is important. How you frame that though is very important.
Yes.
You don't go and say like I might talk about things that happen in juke joints in the sense of like, I want you to remember like, yeah, shit in the world was bad. If depending on any given day, you know, for being a black in America during that time frame, we're talking about 1910s, 1920s. It's like, but generally the juke joint was still your reprieve and your opportunity to get away from everything and just drink a beer, have a good time, see your friends. So like, I need you to remember that. So that tends to be the social context. I would never get up in a class and be like, now I want you all to think about how terrible life was, and I want you to emulate and put that into your soul as you get ready to dance. What? No. I don't want you to try to put on Black Sorrow.
No, I don't want people to like dance for Black Sorrow, but it's like, Kitty, that just reminds me of like something I did. Like I think it was like a teaching poor Ursula. It was hilarious at the time, and at the same time, I could understand how horrifying it was teaching those lessons. And like, you know, people were just real stiff, and I'm like, we're talking about a dance. We're talking about black people in the 1920s and 30s. I mean, still being black in America is bad, but it's like, but it was much worse back then. So we're talking about like something, and I talked about the reprieve. I like let off with the Black Sorrow and like distress, but also with the reprieve for people to understand the context that we're going with. So I'm like, look, I'll go there. Like I literally, it's like a video game. It's like always an optional objective for me, or probably like a mandatory one. Shelby, mention how racism influenced like jazz dance and jazz culture in America, because I think it's better coming from me, especially when I'm wearing like my like I love my blackness hoodie, and they're like, oh well, he's one of those militant ones.
So one thing I want to say about what we were talking about, as far as like Frankie smiling, the minstrelsy before you move on, Maurice, I'll give you a chance before, is that I think for a practical thing for folks, as we're talking, and if you're worried about falling into this, examine why you like or why you restrict black people into a particular box. Because I promise you, if you turn it around, I'm like, oh yeah, I really love seeing someone express and do this thing. Okay, why? Or vice versa, if me having a scowl on my face, let's say if I went Jordan face if during a performance, why does that like raise a guard, or why does that raise a wall for you? For whereas black folks that are in the crowd are not going to take that the same way. They might be like, oh, he's in, he's locked in.
Well, Kenny, it's because they like people like white people have been like conditioned that anything other than joy from a black man is a threat, or any black person in general. I mean, granted, yeah, I think I saw the comment. It's like, but it's like joy is what makes it such an effective dance of resistance too. Our sheer existence and just being who ourselves is the biggest act of resistance we can have. We just have to be joyful that way we don't get, you know, like murdered. I don't know. Like I'm taking it to the extreme, but
yeah, it's a balancing act.
There's a balancing
act. Shouldn't have to do.
Because the expression, especially when you come to the modern context of like how Lindy Hop is still a living, breathing dance form within the black dance continuum. That's what we're trying to push for as a scene. That's what I'm assuming we're trying to push for. Modern contemporary values in black dance will go back and infiltrate other dances from the past. If you follow certain people on Instagram and people on TikTok, like black dancers, they will do old school movements and put new school variants onto it. So something with that is dancing with like not smiling when you dance when you do certain things.
Mm.
And I'll give additional context to that Winter Marsalis comment you were talking about. Is like old heads, old heads like the things that they like, and there's a whole another conversation about intergenerational dynamics of black families, and as music has and dance has changed over generations. So that may be a longer thing. So I tend to think that's a little more him specifically when he makes that comment. It's a little more in that camp of like, he's like, oh, I love jazz. This is what I grew up. This is what my parents gave to me and my family and siblings, and this has been our tradition. So this is why I am just not keen on any other black forms that remove instruments or doing a beat kit and things like that. But what worries me is when people take that comment and then try to apply it to, so this is why it's okay for us to do Lindy or keep Lindy in this framework. I was like, I bet if you were to talk to Winton, I don't think, like, give him all the information of everything we're talking about right now, and I think if you gave him that, I don't think he would sit like, no, that's not what my statement.
I'm sure he loves hip hop. He loves like black music. He loves rhythm, like, and things like that. But he just prefers jazz. Like,
yeah.
Here goes another thing that I've been stewing on about my experience at Herrang was, did you ever take classes with Leonard?
I don't think I took classes with Leonard at Herrang. I took classes with Leonard and W at camp at my first Camp Jitterbug.
So on some of the sort of slated history courses that would be taught, you'd maybe have like a Latin American dance class, or you'd have Marcos come in and teach tap. But for one of the classes, Leonard and Ava were teaching, and I thought this was the craziest thing because I have a really good memory of what Leonard said that day. And he said, while we understand that the African Americans who created this dance, we also want to embrace the European aspects of this dance. So I'm going to show you. And I was like, I'm sorry. I literally had to, like, I stopped, I took off my shoes and I left the class. I was like,
that ain't it, man.
I mean, like, I don't know how much of this you were going to talk about. This could be like a 5-10 second talk, but like, I don't know what he was getting at. I was blown for a loop, because that was like my first real interaction with Leonard, and I was like, did anyone else in the class hear this? And this was the first week, because like we had just taken a class from like Zacarias and doesn't matter. And like right after that class, after super rainy day, we get this, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. Because I feel like he taught that same course all week and then taught us a bunch of Frankie variations. And I was like, that comes from a black person. Is that like, those two levels don't make any sense. I just don't. Also, I don't know if you saw the comments on the post about Leonard stepping down, but I think this is really interesting. Because there
this might be a good time to transition to the recent stuff. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw some of the comments, but they were talking about like this sort of white savior complex story where Leonard went and picked him up from his job at the post office and then brought him to Sweden, and that's how Herrang was started. Before I even went to the camp, I knew that wasn't the story. Like, it's literally in Google of how Herrang came. Like, you can look on the Wikipedia page of not only HTC, but you can look up you can look up the Harlem Hot Shots history, and you can look at every single person who was on that list, and you can see that it was started by Al Minns. And I was just so flabbergasted and confused.
The fact that I learned when he mentioned that Al Minns was the first instructor, I think like that in me, the Frankie worship always weirded me out about the scene. But I think like when I learned that Al Minns originally taught, and like I started dancing in 2011. I did not hear about Al Minns teaching until 2016 from Leonard's presentation about the history of Herrang dance camp. I was fairly irate, and I was like that. I never heard about him in that context, like ever.
I would get a lot of questions of like, "Oh yeah, do you know this dancer and this dancer and this dancer from the period?" And I'm like, "Okay." Um, I mean, I was in college. I was pretty detached from the history until I really got interested in the last year of college, and then that's when I ended up going to Herrang, and I was like, I've seen maybe one clip of Don Hampton. I've seen maybe a couple of things about Barbara and Sugar, um, and Norma was still alive at the time. So of
Barbara
course
and
we were
Sugar
hearing
didn't really move up because like it's kind of like black person dies, let's get our next black person like that we're gonna put on the pedestal, and it's like where Sugar and Barbara are now, which like I hate saying that because they're just because like being around them um, at Beantown a little bit more, and also hearing more of Barbara's story, like with which shameless plug, but not shameless plug. You should get on CBFC, like go to Collective Voices for Change .org or .com. I can't remember the website yet. I'm on the board, and you can look up all our talks that we've done. Donate, give us money. Also, I don't think anybody watched the video to like watch the panel discussion that I put in my Patreon video. Like, really, you need to watch that. Like, people need to watch that. And since while you're like giving money to dance things, like, please throw some money at your boy for the Patreon because it's a lot of work. Anyways, now that that's out the way, it's like I don't know, it's such a shortened history because people just focus on like it's like people's attention spans for things like that. It's just like real short and like I don't know, it's just freaking weird to me. Like I don't know what my point was, but like it's just weird how like we kind of because like with the Dawn Hampton thing, I could have met Dawn in person at my first Lindy Fest, but the people I was with at my scene, like she was giving a talk, they're like, "Oh, it's just Dawn Hampton," and so we went out to dinner, went out to lunch instead. I missed a talk, and then there was the other time at Herrang where they tried to have a talk with her, video cut out. I'm like, "Oh, that was probably the last time I probably get to talk to her," and she passed away, and I've been mad about that ever since.
Mm. Wow. The sort of to get back to the Leonard stepping down post, there were.
Yeah, but yeah, do you
Oh,
want
sorry,
to?
sorry. Yeah,
So
go
for folks that are not aware, we probably should give them
a little bit of context.
what happened recently that kicked off the fires.
What happened was,
Do you want to start, Shelby?
was that your with the top with that? No, that was before you. That was 2017, the Time Machine rent party.
Yeah, that was
because you went in 2019. Because I remember hearing it directly from Ursula about it, Ursula and Shanna about it, and they were irate. Which a guy tried to like get me to tell, well, what did the dancers department performance thought? I'm like, the people I heard from hated it. So they did a whole thing with Felix like said something he like really regrets this as well to like now that he wanted to experience a rent party. So because of that, like Leonard organized a performance at one of the evening camp meetings, like a time machine of making a time machine and taking
there we go.
and taking like Felix back in time to experience a rent party, and that was like a controversial thing, but it didn't like blow up around Facebook until Rough Translations podcast episode on Lindy Hop with Latasha Barnes kind of like talked about it. So the Herrang Facebook page, like they're like, haha, flashback Friday or some nonsense. They posted a performance like that, and because people knew like how kind of like how a bad taste that was from the podcast, a bunch of people it popped off. and like a lot of people were expressing like vitriol towards it and that, and there's people who's Herrang defenders like defending it, and so because of all that conflict, Leonard stepped down because of that, like that blow up and poor choice of videos and social media and not knowing like understanding public relations.
And also like the streamline of people telling their own stories, especially coming from Adam Rosowski and his iterations that he has commented on Facebook posts that have sort of been melding together to all of the confines of what have happened to different pretty important figures in the Lindy Hop scene at this event, which I thought was really important to what was coming to this stepping down of the sorts, which the post itself was not it. It was pretty disingenuous and made
Blame
it
the
seem,
scene.
yeah, blamed the scene, blamed woke people, which, I mean,
I didn't even know they used those terms in Sweden, honestly. Like,
yeah,
I was kind of thrown off. I was like,
I thought that was, strictly jargon for Americans, but I was very much confused. But yeah, the Herrang has known many controversies, and there's been post after post of them trying to, at least one thing that I can give them the benefit of the doubt of is that English is obviously not their first language because it is a camp run in Sweden. However, if you have the money to run a large camp, you probably also have the money to help someone translate and actually do your social media, which would be more important if you're trying to apologize to an entire group of people.
well, I mean, so I'm like, there's instructors in the scene. I'm not going to name them, but I was like, I just think that, social media just means nothing in the grand scheme of things when it comes to social justice.
Like so this is, I was having this conversation with my friend Sepp. I'll throw out for people to hope you'll enjoy that conversation because he's a good egg. Love that man. And we were talking about the fact of like, let's just say, for the sake of argument, and I don't believe this at all, but let's say we gave everyone a pass from up until 2020. It's like, cool, we're gonna do a blank slate. Everyone starting from 2020, you gotta do some work. After the summer of George Floyd, it's like, this is when you need to start doing work. It's just, again, no, this is fantasy land, but just go with me for a second. And also give at least the context of with events and things being shut down, that no matter how much learning you might have done as an organizer, there's only so much you could practically execute because things just weren't open for you to like initiate a new policy or try these things out at your dances. So let's even say that. So that means you've had 2 years. 2 years, and especially depending on your financial circumstance, maybe to even be at home and just stay there and not do and like learn and actually absorb and work on stuff. And then this is still what you came out with. Like, I find that inexcusable. Like, how are you not feeling the pulse of the community and being aware of what things that are happening? And let's say even that you are, like, how did you not take any time to work on it? So like, there's too many circumstances in the last 2 years alone that should have led you to like, we gotta take a different approach here. Even if it were just from a capitalistic, even if it's just like, I want to keep the money in my pocket and not have this thing fall off the rails, even from a practical business owner perspective, you think you would have done like a corporate capitalistic painting.
At least black out your social media page, write the whole paragraph. We believe that here at the Herrang Dance Camp that Black Lives Matter and we should defend the sanctity of life of not only Black Americans, but Black Europeans as well.
Yes.
That's what I'm like.
Like, I would have been like, hey, you're full of crap, but nice job.
I want to address one of the comments. Hey, Sep, I saw. So yes, I'm pretty sure we've all read the apologies, and the Lindy Hop scene being toxic was literally framed as constructive criticism by pretty much every single one of us because we had valid complaints and valid things that had happened to us at these events that we were talking about very specifically towards Herrang. So, if there is a person who is cultivating that sort of mistreatment, not doing anything about it, not trying to make any sort of progression, then frankly, he deserves a criticism. And it's not us being toxic. Us being toxic would be us insulting him constantly. Not like he
harassing him.
doesn't, yeah, harassing him. But
I mean, I
it's,
looked at.
Well, no, but I think he may be talking about the other part of the Lindy Hop scene. Given the conversation I had, I think he's talking about the people that were bootlicking.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah. I just had to address that real quick, and I was like,
okay, no. Just so you're right.
Yeah.
But I think he's talking about the people that were like,
yeah,
but everything's fine.
Yeah, there was somebody talking about also like the fact that woke was like talking about taking down pride flag. The term woke. This is a Shelby teaches AAVE to Lindy Hoppers again. Let's just need to make this a segment. The term woke is a term that came from black academics in regard to like actually being aware of the systemic racism and things of that nature that is very veiled in our society. That was a term that was like very, especially as more stuff with Black Lives Matter started getting more momentum. Pre George Floyd, like post Michael Brown, but there was like another like high profile killing between that where really the term started being more of a thing, or woke being a term. Now that has been like most like black terms that come around from like black academia and goes to like just mainstream black culture, then gets into mainstream culture, which is white culture. It gets shifted, and it has been shifted to a derogatory term by white right-wing conservatives, right-wing American conservatives, because we have international crowds. I need to like say that specifically because that's a considered specific thing. So typically now when woke is used or a term like woke mob is used, it's not a compliment. It's a derogatory term towards people usually standing up for social justice. So that's kind of the explanation. It's like that's pretty much a lot of people is like the woke mob drove out Leonard because like they're accusing us of being toxic for like making basic criticisms, like based on isms. Because I mean, I look like the only time I criticized Leonard directly, and it was directly because I looked the man dead in his eyes. Whereas like during a clip night, we have library talks, and he's just showing off like his favorite tap dance performances, and he shows one of Fred Astaire, and I'm like, I understand if you're going to talk about like tap dancers from 1930s, 1940s, you cannot leave out Fred Astaire. And he chooses to show the one clip he performed in blackface. And I looked I called him out on that directly in front of the camp. I'm like, why would he even do that? Like, you have all these other clips you could have gone from. Like, Putting on the Ritz, I think is his best number. Honestly, also, I feel like Michael Jackson took like a lot of movements from that, along with I think it's Wagon Wheel. I would say that's pretty much Smooth Criminal music video is. It's just a recreation of that entire scene. But yeah, it's like he's done some heinous stuff, but with the cultural standpoint that people come from that are defending him, typically, is that there's no vantage point understanding to see what is actual legitimate criticism or what is actually something. Because I know, thanks to like working with people like Felix Berhol and Michaela Helson with Collective Voice for Change, like Swedish culture, like even very similar to white Anglo-Saxon Protestant American culture, is very not rock the boat. And if you do bring up something and you're not completely 110% calm about it, it's going to be seen as controversial and toxic.
To sort of circle back to the framework that Kenny put in, at least talking about American events, I just want to pose a question since all three of us happen to be black.
Yep.
And you would wait till Shelly is taking
a sip of water.
It just happened.
Do you feel that there is a a expectation of how you are supposed to act as a black person at dance events in America?
No.
What was the question again? I got distracted. I got distracted by a comment.
Do you feel that there are expectations of how you were supposed to act as a black person in America? I mean, because for years, yeah, yes,
Kenny, did we do a
this is a funny
podcast? But
question.
did we do a podcast last year that we like called
I think
Brandon
we talked
Blackness
about
that
this.
kind of talked about this?
I think
Yeah.
we talked about
I-
this. Like, do you go ahead?
Sorry, I think the framework is important for me because even in my personal life, um, I mean, I have to say calm and collected in moments where I would be the angry black person at an event full of white people, which is basically what Lindy Hop events are now, or when like people use the colloquialized phrase of they're gonna crack the whip in classes, or like, yeah, no, people have said that in classes in America, and it's like, um, am I not allowed to be angry, or am I not allowed to be, this individualistic person? But it's just like, I wanted to pose that question because now that we are post George Floyd and having, you know, been in Minneapolis and St. Paul during riots and watching things happen, it's just like, have we learned anything from this?
I think from my time at Beantown, slightly yes, but mostly no. And like, it is not a criticism of Beantown. Honestly, I think Beantown was the. I've Lindy on the Rocks with a mistake. Oh, added them publicly on a thing. Whoops. No, I don't care. But it's like, I think just the culture with that. I mean, I talk to people about it. It's just the culture of how Denver is and people being unaware that you probably shouldn't glare at black people, a black person in a mask for a long period of time and not say anything to them. Because that's going to make me feel very unsafe and very unwanted. Unlike, say, Beantown, I felt a lot more at ease with the culture because people are just more welcoming and just more likely to interact. Now, granted, that could be a difference because of timing. Lindy Rock was like in a very more unsure time where Beantown was still very like there was still a lot of stress, but I think people were in like a much better place to be able to do a mask event or something like that. Um, but um, I don't know. I don't think we have because I mean we still have like instances of like a woman saying like an African dance tradition of like call and response and repeating something that someone sees because they don't have mirrors in Africa. You have things like that being repeated. And there's other things. I still am very concerned because because of the pandemic, I spent a lot of time in mostly Black and POC spaces or interacting with my Black and POC friends. So I am unwilling to maintain a code switch. My code switch for as many periods of time. Like people know, I'm using homie and peeps a lot more, like in regular conversation. But so it's like, and I do worry about how that will kind of affect things going forward and like operating in a very white space because like the space I'm in the most is mostly Hispanic and Asian and black people and people who use AAVE a lot more. So
Hmm.
I don't know, I'm kind of like Beantown gave me a lot of confidence because I think they're just more like it's been people going to the camp since like 5 ever. Like
Yeah.
it just people just enjoy the camp and they love the camp and they like make an attempt like they make an attempt. There's a lot of older white people there, and like they made an attempt. They made a good attempt. It's like, and I love the camp, but I like really appreciate Tony and Orly for what they do. Like with that, like off rip, but there's still like some gaps and things because I still think someone thought I was Joshua McLean.
Hmm.
Or somebody could have, he wasn't even at the camp, but people thought I was probably thought he was there, and they got other black instructors mixed up with other black instructors, and like you never see white instructors like people mixing up white instructors for other white instructors.
I was like, every time I would go to the barber and because I have to with my job, I usually need to wear a high and tight. So or that high top crew fade, and I was like, damn, every black person in the scene's doing that cut right now. Damn, I got to do something else because I know someone's gonna say it, and I'm gonna blow it. Oh man,
I mean,
But,
oh, so go. Did you have something to say,
yeah,
Kenny? Sorry.
I wanted to answer your question. Um, my experience of that has been weird because in a 3-year span, yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. In a 3-year span, I went from like really getting into the blues scene, um, teaching and organizing very quickly, running large like that scale is very very quick.
That escalated
So there
quickly.
was, yeah, it escalated very quickly. So there's a little bit of whiplash. You could ask Jen about this. That there has been. She's talked about Negroes in the scene in the sense of like there's always been Damon and people's perspectives and thoughts on Damon and his attitudes towards other folks. And by comparison, you know, uh, if Damon looks like Malcolm X, I look like Wayne Brady. By comparison, it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter what I do.
You ain't Brady. You ain't Martin Luther King. You ain't Brady.
That's so funny. God.
I am the Wayne Brady in the blues scene, which is like wrap your head around that. But it also makes this interesting. But I would also say in the last 2 years of that, or like the last couple of years of that, from like 2019 onward, I've also felt empowered to say more. So I don't, and again, that could be me towing a line there. Maybe I need to examine that. Maybe I should be more forceful. But I feel like I've also been empowered to say more, and at least in that space, I've felt comfortable.
Don't
Socially, though,
we need to like we need more calm Negroes. We need more.
But I will say my experience though is still. I don't want to say that my experience doesn't matter. I would say who I'm more concerned about though are other Black social dancers.
Yes.
Because the fact that I can get away with saying things because I have status or power behind my words as an organizer or just someone in the scene with status in the scene, I don't think like that's not the barometer for success. I really eventually like to have this conversation with other Black women and different representations of minorities in the scene that are not in positions like we are, and be like, how is it going for you?
Yeah.
Because I'll give an example. And this happened in my scene. There were 3 Black women that came in at our local Lindy on a Friday night, and I'm acutely aware of this all the time. I see it all the time, and they were not getting dances. And they gave it a good try. They gave it about an hour. And I ran over and tried to get some dances with them, but that was not going to be enough. Me running over to dance with them was not going to be enough to keep them there because it was obvious this space was uncomfortable for them, and no one was making an effort to make it any better.
Yeah.
So I don't want to speak for them, but I think it'd be very fair to say like they are not like as far as we're talking about the scene working for them, it currently is not. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that story repeated as we find other friends to come in and talk about this.
I'm gonna interject a hot take with that on that. This dance isn't fun enough just to keep people off rip, y'all. Like I think that's what a lot of people like operate on. This dance, how it's danced, doesn't look cool enough to keep people's attention. Like when you compare, like when it comes to having more Black people in this scene, how did Lindy Hop implement it and how it's danced compared to other Black dances that are currently going forward right now? Lindy Hop is pretty freaking boring. So if you want to keep Black people around, you have to make the honest to God effort to dance with them. Like, and I think that's something because I think that's like, and I'm just making a reach because I think I'm knowing the people who organize Lindy Hop stuff in St. Louis, that's the mentality that they have probably.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that, oh, this dance is fun, the music's fun, and they'll stay. No, like you gotta you gotta dance with people, you gotta talk to the people, you gotta do something because like the huge difference of a Black space is, and this is probably something I'm gonna write, is that if I'm in a space long enough, people are gonna notice when I'm not there if I come back to it.
It sort of relates to how much of the social aspect of social dance is sort of you don't see people interacting with Black people outside in their regular lives, and it's very apparent when you come to events and dances, because you really don't know what to say to us and you end up saying the wrong thing most of the time. And you don't know that those are microaggressions, but we do. And some of us don't have the comfortability to check you because it may come off as being angry inside of these events. So it's just a general being careful thing. But like, if any of you spent time in a Black community for like more than 10 minutes, you would actually know what the hell is going on with the rest of us.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, because like one thing I get annoyed about, and it's like, I'm happy that a lot of people, the people who've said this to me are people I'm very close with now, but I also have friends who are like, who are just social dancers, who people like, who aren't like on like, who are probably like, they're not like some of the more skilled dancers. They just want to have fun. So they don't do a lot of stuff to try and improve their skill. But they're like, there's people who like haven't been intimidated by me, like at our venue, like, and never say this to a Black person, or just get over it. Like, we're not going to be smiling all the time. Like, we're not. Especially in this day and age of how America is, we really have very few things to smile
about. A lot to think.
Yeah.
Like, and like, so I hate it because Sons of Herman Hall, that's our main venue in Dallas. There's a stage. I hate being next to the dance floor if I'm not dancing. Because one, I don't want to have to turn down dances because people still give me crap to this day for turning down dances if I don't want to dance. Yeah, hooray for bodily autonomy. But also, and because of that, since I have the stage, I can sit on the stage and be away from not be in anybody's way and not have to worry about getting kicked or people worry about stepping on me or things like that. And people see me there and like I have just my neutral expression, apparently have RBF like, and people are like, well, you just don't look welcoming and like no one wants to come, like it doesn't make me want to come talk to you. I'm like,
maybe if you just step correct, we'll be all right.
Just come and say hi. I'll brighten up. Like, yeah, like
I don't look welcoming. What does that mean?
Are you clutching your pearls?
Yes.
Bringing your purse a little closer. Goodness.
I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know. Like, I'll just be stared off into space because I'm like, but it's like, I know it's like so many like white folks. Like, you got to get past it. Like, you got to get past that. Like, people are, I mean, shoot, there's white people who don't smile a lot, and y'all still talk to them.
I want to bring one thing with that. But real quick, Hazy, I see your comment, so I'm going to get. We'll get
about the LGBT.
Yes.
Plus.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we saw that comment, so.
Yeah, we'll get back there.
I wanted to interject on Kenny's point about like that. Like with that, it's like, and I think that's a mentality a lot of people have. Is like the dance is fun enough where people will just stay. It's like it's not. And yeah, I saw a comment say it's like that's true with anybody. But I think it's more like you have to dance with them. I think as long as you acknowledge people and like their presence there, they're more likely to stay. And yes, dancing is a good default, but you still have to talk to people. Because if you just treat someone that's like an object just to dance, that's not going to go over well either.
Well, so this is a thing that white dancers got to learn to chill out. And I say this a lot about just like being relaxed as far as like how you dance. But I mean just the spirit of, can you just exist in a space and be all right and be okay? Because there's times I've gone out socially in St. Louis or Nashville, or I go visit friends, other dancers, and they're like, man, we got to go dance. And I'm like, or we can have a drink together and just hang out. If, like if we did 3 hours of dancing, I will be okay if the next hour when we go to drinks at a cocktail bar or something doesn't have dancing. Like, we'll be all right. And I bring that up because I think about a lot of Black spaces that I'm in. If you go to a stepping event, everybody's in there is not stepping.
Yeah.
Some people came to just throw on their Sunday bests, to listen to music, catch up with friends. They might dance 1 or 2 songs, and the rest of the time they're gonna be cool. They're gonna be good. They got a drink in their hand. They are fine. So the other thing when I bring up Black women in the scene is they should still get dances. So this is not taking away that part of it, because if they want to try to dance, they should have the opportunity to do that. But there's a lot of non-chill happening. So if you come into a room that you're already one of the only black folks in there, or sometimes you might be the black person in there, there's no chill. So it pretty much is just dance and or a lot of y'all not doing these in bars. So it's a studio or it's going to be a big ballroom. So there may not really be a hangout space, and or you have not facilitated any opportunity to have hangout space, or like, hey, there's some times to actually legitimately just hang out for a bit, mixer, chill out, or actually facilitate a mixer. And that could be awkward, sure, but at least that would be giving an effort to try to help people interact and make new friends. So yeah, if you're not getting dances and none of that is happening, why would you want to exist in that space? There is no opportunity to be chill in that kind of environment.
Ooh, someone hanging hibiscus. Can we just stop assuming that black women do not know how to dance Lindy Hop just because you are not familiar with them? Yes.
Oh, thank you. So I want to say this real quick. It's a stereotype that all black people can dance. So that's just not true. I've seen some brothers saying got rhythm. So it's
same.
I hate to pop your bubble, but if you didn't know that. That said, if you dance with black women, and just take away your expectation of, but they're not doing the Lindy Hop the way that I thought they were gonna do the Lindy Hop, you're probably gonna have a better time and a better experience in that dance. Just full stop. I can explain that more if I need to, but I don't feel like that should really be that controversial. I feel like you two may understand exactly what I'm talking about if I need to dive into that more. But I think about how many times I've had dances with some of my older black folks at the Blues Museum who do they know what Texas Shuffle is? No. They don't need to know, because I'm moving through movements, and they're like, okay, I got it. He's got a groove. Got it. Cool. And they just go along. Cool. We're vibing. We're having a good time.
Mm.
But I feel like if people are like, but I need them to do these steps, and I need them to do this triple the way I'm asked, like, but are they moving in space with you?
Yes.
Are they generally giving you some leverage compression that you can move and work around with? Yeah. Then hush, shut up, have a Coke, and go on somewhere. Hashtag not sponsored by Coke, but hashtag if you want to sponsor us, Coca-Cola, I wouldn't say that.
I need to get on that Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow
Legends. Sponsored.
Surprise! This podcast is all been taken.
Oh my god!
Gotcha.
Let's go like LGBT.
I wanted to get back to that comment for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have anything before I give my 2 cents?
I think it's best if you lead it off. Honestly, I feel like you'd be able to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, being the most queer of us all, I guess. My experience in 2019 was hearing the words of Saga and many of the other queer folks in the camp, which were not only not delighted, but they were also telling Adam Brzezowski's story about Leonard going and actively taking down pride flags. And as the weeks continued on, we were trying to push more ideas of like non-gender conforming partnered dancing, or like lots of switching. And we ended up doing like I think a performance at one of the nights where they have people come on and do performances, and I thought it was really cool. And that was really one of my first experiences being really out to the community, because generally I like to keep a lot of things to myself. But we got to have a conversation with Denise afterwards, Denise Mins, and she was very delighted that we ended up going up there and dancing in front of the entirety of the camp, because it was like, this is the most, even though it was kind of cringe, this is the most representation we've seen from the community so far that year. And that was like sort of a push, but that was about it. I mean, the treatment towards me is I present rather mask is very different because they see me as black first before they see me as queer.
Yeah.
And while there is an intersectionality, um, it's that conflating the two for me is really difficult because there are some things in the lived experience of being queer that is nowhere near the same as being black. And I just want to preface with that. But a lot of the stories that I've heard, this would be better for, again, another conversation with folks who have experienced it a little bit more. But from what I can understand, it's generally not good. And frankly, it's sort of what has kept me back from being more open about my sexuality because, frankly, um, I could end up in the wrong place, going to an event in somewhere that I'm not familiar with. And once that's very clear that that's not under the values of the actual people who run the camp, um, then I'm out of there. I don't want to go to these events. I don't want to be at a place where not even like, if I can't even be treated well as a black person, what would make me want to go to an event as a queer person also? Because like
Yeah.
those things don't leave me. I don't stop being black when I'm angry. I don't stop being black when I'm being black. I don't stop being any of these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if that's not safe
Yeah.
at all, um, it's just like that was my feeling going into Herrang. Is like I didn't want to openly express things because I didn't know, and then when I found out, I really didn't want to know.
Yeah. I mean, a benefit because I'm thinking like if we would have had this conversation like even 2 years ago or even before, like before this, like I wouldn't really be able to much input. And I can think of just like conversations of experiences of a lot of queer friends I've been able to get a lot closer to over the pandemic. It's like Herrang would like because my experience, I think about Herrang mostly just being a black man, but also I don't think as for like my trans friends who I know like I don't foresee Herrang being a very safe place for them. Like it's just something I can imagine. I like in me, I can't fathom in my like mind of being just someone who's cis het and who tries to understand. I just can't fathom like how in the ways it would be unsafe for like queer people. But it's just like it would not be a place I think I would recommend for any of my trans friends. Definitely, because I'm
Yeah,
not even sure how like the camp would even be able to handle that and things like that. And
I mean, in certain scenes, I mean, even in smaller scenes in America, they're still teaching that men lead and women follow. Like we cannot centralize this idea that we're even breaking down lines if we've built bricks over them.
yeah, I
Like,
mean the dance is still, and I think it's like that's what's annoying is how people give lip service to being non-gender conforming, but still how much they just talk about the dance and discuss it is like pushed as a gender binary. Um, pushes a gender binary so much that I hear is kind of like weird, like how much the scene talks about it, but how much like we haven't really made much progress from it. Like hearing from like my queer friends and now being able to see it some more, it's just like it's very aggravating to see. And like if like really the scene as a whole hasn't really made much progress. Like Herrang hasn't made probably not even thought that even queer people exist from an organizational standpoint. Because I think they're behind what the rest of the scenes like values and views are.
in to comment on Hazy Jane's other European festivals, I haven't really been to many. I did end up going to a dance while I was in Estonia, um, to which I was there for only an hour and a half because I was like, oh, I just needed to see a few folks that were going to the event um, from Sweden that I had seen earlier that week. Um, but otherwise, it's just like, it's a really, really complicated, not in the sense that people shouldn't be treating you like a human no matter how you present.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that most of the queer talks are being led by white people, um, and
Oh
that
my goodness, yeah.
frankly, if you already have, like, I have this meme that's in like the very back of my phone, and that um, so it's like a band-aid covering a scar that says white guilt, and the cover up is being queer, and that is often the
Mm.
um, sort of the impression that I get from people when they're being defensive in the community. It's that, like, oh, I have this sort of leverage also, and my story is more important than yours. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, okay. So again, the layer first is the color of my skin always before I even mention that I'm queer.
Yeah, an interesting thing when it comes to like running out points like safety and I think I shared this with you, Maurice. I'm like trying to like we talk about like it is like gonna be this can be another conversation, but it's mentioned here like regards to, like queerness and blackness. Like I feel like the scene really embraces like try and get this right well black men to be safe or wholesome if they're very queer adjacent. Like
Mm.
embrace like a lot of qualities of queerness rather than in it's very interesting dichotomy I kind of see with that a little bit, like how it's, but it's like sort of like a more white coded queerness because it's like that doesn't present the same with like people of color that as well like with white
I
people.
mean, Gray said this years ago that, like, most, most if not all code of conducts or um, sort of safety protocols protect white women before they protect anyone else.
Yeah,
And it's so specific to that gesture that even then it kind of collates to white queerness before it gets anywhere else past the spectrum. Um, and that's
the,
why not only is the conversation difficult, but it's from country to country, it's really hard too.
yeah, and it's funny that you say that. Yeah, it'll cover white queerness. Because then like a lot of my queer friends who are white still don't feel safe in a way,
Hmm.
which I'm like how did you do that? Like safe spaces, like codes of conduct, like how?
I think I think one thing, as a sort of, as a proposal that could be more so taken a look at, is like, how do we, what are the values of the community that you're presently dancing in, and how do they affect the people that are coming to your events? Because frankly, we are so worried about how dance events are going to affect everyone coming, instead of our local dances, which may or may not have black people who are coming constantly, having queer people, having these minority groups that we um, exactly, and who are not coming for specific reasons. But like, I was one of the most consistent goers of like some of my dance, like main dances back at home. Eventually I just got busy, but like when I was in Minnesota, I was like one or two there was like one or two black people even in the blues scene itself, which I feel is more progressive than others, and still there's like a disconnect. There's something that is not inviting about these events that makes it really, really hard, because they are constantly run by people who don't know how to
Yeah,
interact with black people
yeah.
or
It's the lack of
interact with queer people.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the lack of intercultural competency that that drives me up a wall. Honestly, it's like a lot of people like they good intentions can only get so far I think a lot of people, like, since they haven't been in spaces where they have to interact with a lot of different people and like work together. I mean, people will shit on sports and call it sports ball all they will, but y'all need to like listen to coaches, like talk who are really great leaders, because they are people who are, because my education is getting a group of people from different walks of life and different like values and cultural views to work towards a single goal. And so, like, granted, they won't give all the answers. Also, like talk to cultural experts or get on social media and follow people who are willing to explain those things, who like do that. Because there's like a lot of like queer people on social media who talk about the ins and outs of queer culture, and Black people just post like little things about Black culture, and you kind of understand how people interact and stuff like that. But it's like, I think it's like just a knowledge of how people function in social spaces is what's needed. Because I think a lot of people like, hey, we want to have these people in a space. Like, okay, you do that by mind, but the execution is not going to be there because you are not altering the culture and practices of the space to incorporate these people.
I want to
So who's gonna make a
address
can?
one of the
No.
comments here from, is it Pykors, Pykors, that organizers need to spend more time in Black spaces. Sure, in one way, that is helpful, frankly. But in another way, that is not the opportunity for you to capitalize on those spaces. It is for you to learn why these interactions happen and make it so that your community knows to do better.
And it should not just only be organizers. It should be teachers. It should be people at the top of the social hierarchy of the scene doing that. Like, if it's just the organizers, the rest of the whole thing is going to be crap anyway.
Yep.
It's instructors need to do that. Like, instructors need to be able to do that, because the scene doesn't go as organizers go. The scene goes as instructors go. The scenes go as like the dancers at the top of the food chain go. It's just that's how it works. Like, the organizers can do all they want, but when it comes to like the like social day to day, it's gonna be like those higher level dancers, or not even higher level, because in skill you have those people who are just like they kind of have like an unofficial leadership of the social space. They're like a stalwart of the scene. They may not be the best, and typically they're not the best dancer. They're just somebody who's like real fun on the dance floor and people like, and it's just welcoming. Like, those people need to know, and like other people, it's a group effort. It takes everyone to win. But it starts at the top and with the organizers. But I think what's different is I think people make programs and brand things to help. It's like, no, you just need people to actually act and do things.
Yes. Kenny, I see your face has been stewing on a couple of thoughts, and I wanted to hear your perspective.
So one thing, because I know we're getting to the end of our time, so we're probably let me do some quick plugs before, because I know some people probably time zone wise maybe doing bed and stuff like that. So thanks for folks that have donated to Shelby and Maurice. We had a question in the chat, so I'll just bring that up. There's a multiple options. I was not able to add an option for this podcast on the donate for Ujima, but you can just pick annual scholarship, and I'll drop this link in the event and stuff too, so people can see it later as well.
Oh, that was from Marin.
Yeah. You can pick annual scholarship, but I'll know the ones that are coming in today are specifically for this podcast. Make sure to reroute that to Shelby and Maurice appropriately. And also, if you want to give to Shelby's, dropped a link in for their Patreon as well. So consider supporting them as well. And then for me, if you just like the social media page, that helps me out a lot, just because I can send notifications when things go live or when we have more chats and things coming up in the future. So just want to plug that now before we get to our last little bit. People don't think about organizational structure as far as I'll use a close embrace example.
Oh gosh.
But There's not the. It's not even to get into the can of worms with that. What really I'm saying is that I think about if the result I want is people comfortable on the dance floor to know how it's done appropriately. Is that just a teacher? Is that just teaching it better? Or are there other structural things I need to have in place? Or the way I'm teaching my teachers and things that are doing that? And or even like talking to some of my folks that are regular attendees about like, hey, would you do me a favor? If you had a bad dance because something happened, like, would you make sure that I know? Or if you hear for the grapevine that someone had something happen, can you have them come to me? That's even outside of the safe space policy of like, please let me know so that I can go try to handle that. Because I will have that awkward conversation. I'm willing to do that to make sure that it gets addressed so that over time, the culture in my CNM community, one, knows what, like, as using that as an example, but knows the expectation of like, hey, this is how we dance that. There's a reason we don't do it this way. And if you do it this way, that kind of a sign to us that maybe we need to have a conversation, or maybe you don't know what you're doing, and or you're going to make the people here uncomfortable because you're now doing something that is could be unsafe, and or it's just going to be like creepy behavior. So like kind of put it like, again, don't want to get into that whole bag right now, but just using that as an example. So if I think about like gender expression, how hard is it for me to give my pronouns and things when I start a class? That's like 2 seconds. But that little change, and you basically, but I still see so many instructors just kind of like blast right past it. And I'm like, that's not even necessarily to raise a flag for yourself and be like, hey, look at what I'm doing. I was like, but that's just a structural thing that you could do. That's really, really easy. Heck, I even noticed I didn't do it on my tag here in the video. But that's, how long would that have taken?
Yeah.
Using as an example, but there's all these little structural things that can help reinforce your cultural values. If you think about like, where could I plug this in? Where could I plug this in? That are very natural spots to do that don't require huge changes. Sorry,
also, it may not. And I'm just gonna be honest. I think for things like this, for like white people, it's not going to be natural. It's going to be a skill that you have to develop later in life. I mean, because for the three of us, for the sake of our survival and to be able to operate in society, we've had to develop these skills over a long period of time. So, like, I like understand what you're coming at, Kenny, like saying, "Oh, like just do it a natural thing." No, none of this is going to feel natural. For you.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
All right, my bad, Maurice. I just jumped in.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. I think it's really, really important that you brought up what you did, Kenny, as an example. And also I was listening to a podcast recently and how this is involved in even theater itself and arts that are practiced outside of dance, and that it's easy to write in characters with disabilities and hire those people. It's easy to write in trans people. It's easy to do these things. Super easy. I mean, if you've seen the newest season of Umbrella Academy, they changed Elliot Page's character to be Victor because he's trans. And it was that easy.
They just did it and and people are like, "Oh my gosh, why not?" I'm like, no, like that's how it should be. It should just be the change made. We bring no attention. Because that's how it goes in real life. Like
Haircut. The actor is going to be the plight of that show for the rest of its time, and this is how we should be treating, doing things in our like customary practices of running events. It's like, oh yeah, it'll be normal for me to say my pronouns or things of that nature. And this is also about the progression of events and how we want to run them and who we want to hire. But again, it's that easy.
Yeah, because I mean, it's kind of crazy. Event I'm teaching for next month, Flying Home, they actually put the pronouns for all the instructors, and like I made sure to intentionally put mine because I know my partner I'm teaching with, Jamaica, is is queer, and I was just talking to them about it. I'm like, okay, so what is like pronouns? I put it in my email because like when I recommended them, I put the pronouns for all my instructor partners. I think because of that, the organizers decided to put the pronouns for their teachers, which me, small detail, but I was just like, oh, that's like, it's a big deal. I feel like it's like it's
something else I was going to say. I feel like from Ujimba's perspective, I have talked a lot about, and I would say, it's more I think about what I was just talking about, the small changes. But I wonder if that would be a useful thing to, in the future, is like, how can I highlight these small things that are like, these things that create a holistic cultural change of like, yes, these things you should stop doing in class or like quit actively doing these things. But here are so how would I create that roadmap for an organizer or for a teacher? Like, I think that might be a useful thing to like brainstorm. Like, because again, I know these things, but I don't think I have ever really, I've articulated, but I don't know if I've ever actually given that as a like, hey, take this, you can run with this. And if you do these things, I promise you'll start to think, again, to Shelby, what you said about awkwardness, like it's going to be, that was a good point. Like, it's going to be awkward. But,
it's the formality. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was thinking about it as like the formality of having it in contracts too. Like if I'm hiring you, these are the things that we think are good, that we think are going to be coming along in events that will help shape the way that events are treating people better eventually. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think for me, when it comes to like going back to like blackness aspect of black culture stuff, I think it's like, one, shameless plug again, people have hired me from consulting about intertwining those things and how I do it. So you can find me on Facebook. Just message Shelby L. Johnson on Facebook. But I think it's like it's going to take work, because I think the simple thing of just putting a small summary, oh, this is a Black American dance, but then teaching it in a very Eurocentric way when it's like with counts and things like that, makes it very hollow rather than doing it more like a kind of a storytelling approach. Granted, that's going to put more onus on the instructor to know their things, to be able to pull information and do it out, but it's going to change because, like, I mean, in my fitness training, I constantly relearn how to teach the same movements over and over again, relearn how to cue things. Like, I do not coach squats the same way now in 2022 as I did in 2012 when I first started training. Always constantly reinventing how I do things. So it's like with that, like incorporating more history and culture is just going to be a part of the process of you understanding moves more, like the dances more, and the information's up. I mean, there's more information available for us now than there were for the people who started doing it and had to like trade VHSs or like Sylvia Sykes' case, like memorize when certain films were showing on TV, take to the TV guide and set an alarm so she'd go watch that dance scene that one time and pick things up again. Like,
man.
So
I think that's all I got.
One last thing I'll say is, I brought this up when me and Sepp were talking. So when I drop that video, I hope you will go check that out. So
Sepp
I was hoping Belgium again.
Belgium, okay,
yeah, Sepp. Sepp's good. Love that guy.
And I was hoping to get that out before didn't have time, but it'll still be valuable for people. Should go watch it. Nice little short, like 20 minutes. Social issues are inherently political. So when you say you don't want to talk about politics, like then you say you don't care about us. And I just really gotta foot stomp that. Yep. So when you go in comment sections and defend that nonsense, like
my existence is political. I'm glad, so that's why. Like people were like, why is it? What? Like I know someone's probably asked, like, why would saying something like that be like, oh, we don't care about y'all? Because our existence is political. Like, maybe, like that's like, And going back to like when I was in church, I always found it funny when people like church, we gotta be anti-cultural. I'm like, me being a black man who refuses to smile all the time is one of the biggest political statements I can make, and be obnoxiously myself. Maurice being obnoxiously themselves, like in everything, is the biggest political statement they can make. Same thing for Kenny. Same thing for any like black person, cis het, or in queer it goes double. They decide to have the queer expression with their life. It's like it's a political statement, so everything we do is going to be political. Also, the art form is political. So if you're not into politics, get out.
And the
And
other
this is for people who probably aren't watching right now who would say that watching recording. So I mean,
Yeah.
And other things, or last thing I'll say, I do think the scene has a willingness to forgive if you get out in front of something. I'm not even trying to say that as like a PR strategy or anything. Please don't take it as like, oh, if you just get up, it's like, no, but like,
I'll roast you.
Yeah, and you might have to take some lumps in the comments of like, why the heck did you do that, right? But if you legitimately saw that you made an error and like, oh, should not have done that, I apologize. Like when people bring something to your attention, don't double down on it. Take the feedback, make the apology, and keep on stepping. And I promise you, you'll probably go a lot better. Like you may still need to learn things. Like if you keep making the same mistake over and over again, we're going to kind of figure out. Yeah, we're going to figure out that you really didn't take the note. You didn't understand the assignment. That'll get sussed out pretty soon over time. But this idea that's like there's no way, there's no forgiveness or no reconciliations. Like I don't actually buy that. But what's mostly happening is like you double down on it. Now I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to say that there aren't circumstances that come up. Maybe we could talk about that another time. Or
that is a segue into a question in the chat. It was like, so the stream started with some joking about never going to Herrang, but what would it take to make you want to go? Is there even anything that could be done?
No. So I mean, after my experience and seeing what's happened so far, and also that there were some other controversies with contract-related things that I'm not going to go into, but no, there's a lot deeply stemmed into that camp that needs to be fixed. That you can't do with the present.
I'm going to be 110% real. I don't think the camp needs to exist in the way that it is. Like, honestly. Like, it just doesn't. You can change the people, change the thing. Like, all the changes that I would want for it to be something that I want to go. It's just a scenic route of me saying the camp doesn't need to exist. Because the only alternative I would make it is, like, take Frankie's face off everything, move it away from Sweden, and all that. And you can just... Like, it just needs to be something else. There just needs to be something else. I don't really see a place for the camp all that much. Has it done positive things? As much as it hurts my soul to say it, yes, it has done positive things. But I think it's ran its course.
And I think it's okay for something to have run its course and then let something else come out of those ashes, which is an uncomfortable space for people to live in. Like it's like, well, we got to keep it going because this is the thing we've done in the past, or this is what's been successful, or like there's a lot of legacy and history here. But I'm like, but there can also be something really exciting. I find excitement in change, and hell, being in the military, you kind of just gotta like if you either embrace change or you're not gonna have a really good time. That's a whole nother.
Which is kind of funny as a event. Kind of brought up something as an event that says it like tries to embrace the values of Black dance, but yet it stays so hard pressed in its ways and refuses to evolve is the antithesis of Black dance. Am I using that word correctly? Please tell me, because I'm like, dang, that sounds good, but then you misused it.
I think you got it in the right ballpark.
Yeah. So yeah, like it's just like just refusing to change because But Grant, I think like refusing to change and not embracing change is just something that's not like it's just something that part of Black culture because it's a necessary survival mechanism because ever since we came to America, our culture has been trying to destroy it, and we've thrived by innovating and constantly creating new because society tries to take away what we created and erase our ownership of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
go to Wellborn. Yep.
There are other camps.
Wellborn, Beantown. I'll endorse
Wellborn,
Beantown.
Yep.
All day. I love that camp, and I'm going to put it out there because I know I said like some things like negative things that happened, but I mean no place is perfect. But I absolutely love that camp and feel like more people should support it. Honestly. So.
Paul says, yeah, we can wrap here. Are there European events that you see doing the right things? Hey, my friend Sepp is in the chat. I like everything he does. I like everything he does in Belgium. Haven't had a problem. I've loved everything.
Sepp is doing good. Yep.
Yeah, and there probably are more, but that's someone I know for sure have personal like.
There's more. I can't remember the names of people that we mentioned, like with CBFC, like because there's events that like people get excited about, but I'm just not as familiar with the European events like as I was in the past. But so there are more events in Europe making efforts than there have been in the past. I feel like
yes,
yeah, and definitely don't want to make shit only a European-centric issue. To be clear,
yeah, North America, y'all effing up too.
Shelby and Maurice, thank you for giving me your time. Like I really appreciate it. I always love chatting with you too.
Yeah,
it's always really good. And I feel I had a really good time, even though we're talking about some hard stuff.
Hard hitting stuff. It's just another Saturday, you know.
Yeah.
Just another day in America. Yeah. For folks that have followed me on Talk to Me, I am going to do before I go to Europe. I'm going to be going over in a little bit. Before I do that, though, I am going to do 2 Talk to Me shows because they are sorely needed right now. One of them is going to be we're going to talk about Christian nationalism. I know that's like complete pivot from dance, but gosh, does it have some relation to? There's a thread of what we talked about today that's in that, and then I'll expand on that. For people that
touching on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are, if you're curious, like what is going on in the States right now, this could help explain a lot of that. And I think there's a lot of people, my progressive friends, that maybe don't understand how to talk to Christians. I think this would give you there's
Andrea Gordon made and it's not just like Christian, like, and I think like there's a dumpster fire where someone who was a Christian and actually like agrees with more progressive stances, talk about like, hey, just because this like we can get along and stuff, and people are like, well, Christians do this, that, and I'm like, this is not a time to fight. This was not a moment to fight, and you effed it up. Like,
yeah. But I'll let y'all know when that comes out. And thank you all for the support. I see the different donations and stuff that come in that can go to Shelby and Maurice. You've got Shelby's link for the Patreon. Thank you all for the folks that have liked the page. It definitely helps me out for letting folks know when new stuff comes out. And tell your friends, because the recording will go up. There will be obviously you can rewatch the live stream, but I know sometimes that will fall off. So I will read it sometime this weekend or at the start of the week for the actual recorded version to make sure that will stay. And you'll find that on Twitch, Facebook, and also on my YouTube as well, just so have a permanent spot to go back and look at it. So,
permanent spot.
Yeah. Permanent spot. So, yeah, thank you all for joining us. You can always throw more comments in. We'll see if we can get to those. Not live feed, but we'll see those on there. But thank you all.
Thank you.